Earlier this year, the Vice President J.D. Vance proclaimed, "I want more babies in the United States of America." And he's not alone in ringing the alarm bells about collapsing birth rates. But he will have his work cut out. Nearly 1/2 of all US adults under 50 say they are unlikely to ever have children. 60% of those say they just don't want kids. 40% say they either can't afford children or the state of the world is too depressing to bring children into it. Fertility rates are certainly falling across the world, but they are now falling faster than predicted. Just 10 years ago, the UK government predicted a fertility rate of 1.8, but today it is 1.45. The ONS consistently predict fertility will pick up, but we can see that the main trend is just straight down. What is behind this and where does it end? Well, the first thing that springs to mind is simply the cost of living. 1980 private rent might take 10% of your income. Today it is closer to 30%. In 1980 house prices 4 times income. Today it's closer to 8 times income. If it's impossible to buy a 3 to 4 bedroomed house, it's entirely rational to have either one child or no child at all. In 2025, it's estimated that the cost of bringing up a child to the age of 18 is around $260,000, which ironically is pretty much close to the average cost of a price in the UK. Which would you prefer, an extra child or being able to buy a house? Since 1997, the basic UK state pension has increased 50%, but child benefits have fallen in real terms, and now there's a cap on benefits for more than 2 children. In the future, there will be a lot more pensioners and fewer children. The effect on government spending and the economy will be huge. Debt is forecast to soar in pretty much every economy. I understand this economic argument myself. If I had 2 children, I wouldn't be using this bedroom to record YouTube videos. I probably wouldn't be on YouTube at all, but would have to go out and get a proper job with a proper salary. But if the cost of living is a major factor causing falling birth rates, how do we explain falling birth rates in countries where living costs are not so onerous? This graph shows housing costs as a share of income in Europe. Italy and Poland have relatively low housing costs, but a birth rate of 1.2 and 1.3. Norway and Germany have relatively higher housing costs, but higher birth rates. And zoom away from Europe, and the bigger picture is that fertility rates have plummeted in nearly every part of the globe. 40 years ago, India had a fertility rate of 5, and the population was exploding, now the biggest country in the world, of course. Now, though, fertility rates have fallen below the replacement ratio. In that time, living standards have increased a lot. And in fact, there are many good trends behind falling fertility rates. Better education, improved status of women, higher wages, more access to contraception. But whilst we once worried about overpopulation, now we're worrying about the opposite. Too few people. Now, it was widely assumed that this century would be Asia's century, but something happened around 2016 which caused fertility rates to plummet. Now, there was no economic crisis in 2016, no sudden change in living costs. So why did fertility rates fall so rapidly from that year onwards? One theory is that 2016 was a time when social media like Instagram really took off, grabbing our attention, rewiring our brains, and changing attitudes. The old world was hanging out in a bar, but this has been replaced with hanging out online in a group chat. Now, it may sound speculative and almost fanciful, but there is evidence that higher social media use really is leading to declining fertility rates. Whether it's Finland or Africa, higher social media use is linked to lower birth rates. In recent years, we've seen a very significant increase in levels of anxiety amongst young people, a rise in the number of single people, a fall in dating, and a fall in the number of couples. Rather unsurprisingly, this is causing lower fertility rates. In the US, over half of 18 to 34-year-olds are neither in a steady relationship or living with a partner. Now, there used to be tremendous social pressure to get married and have children, but since the 1960s, this social expectation has fallen away, slowly at first, but now very rapidly. To be a bachelor or a single woman was once a major issue, the source of a Jane Austen novel, something that had to be solved. But now people kind of shrug their shoulders. And in the past, when large families were the norm, it was much easier for other people to have a large family too. Now it is so rare to see a family of 3, 4, 5 children, but either consciously or unconsciously, people don't want to go there. And when your friends are childless, you are no longer feeling left out if you're the same. Now, there are many reasons, but it does seem that social and technological change is causing something of a divergence between men and women. And we can see this reflected in, say, different political attitudes. As the FT have noted in this chart, men have been veering very heavily to the right, women veering largely to the left. But there's also a divergence in where people spend time. Men increasingly spend time playing computer games online, women on Instagram. But there's always extra time online has come at the expense of a decline in participation in activities which used to bring a natural mixing of the sexes. And with more time spent apart in different social media bubbles, this has led to a divergence of outlook on life. Even dating apps seem to have been failing in their purpose of bringing people together, a bewildering level of choice and sense of disconnect. The screen really hasn't brought people together. Now, some claim that the reason for falling fertility rates is the fact that women are now more highly educational, more aspirational in terms of career choice. And given the setback to career that can occur when you take out time to have children, it is understandable that it can be less desire to have children or later in life. Certainly there is some, though quite weak, correlation between higher female educational levels and declining fertility. But it really can't explain the bigger picture. In Tunisia and Turkey, female participation rates are extremely low, just 30% compared to say 80% in the US. But Tunisia and Turkey both now have fertility rates of less than 2. And by the way, it's not just the Christian world where fertility rates are falling. Predominantly Islamic countries like Oman, Kuwait, Iran, Singapore, Algeria have all recorded 5 out of the 10 largest declines in fertility rates in the past few decades. Now, Seoul in Korea has a distinction for having one of the lowest fertility rates in the world, just 0.55. And if you ask young women why they are not having children, their main reasons include things like the high cost of housing, the crazy pressure for paying for extracurricular education in the evening, and that just the high cost and time involved in bringing up children. In a super competitive society, it's very hard to find the time. One young woman rather sadly reported she just didn't feel Korea was a place where a child can live happily. Korea's economy has grown at a breakneck pace, but it has come at a cost of a fall in the fertility rates, but it's so large it threatens the future of that society. Now, economists generally have great faith that you can solve any problem through changing incentives, cash for kids. But policies to increase fertility suggest that economics might have met its match. Nearly 2/3 of all countries have some policies to increase birth rates, but very largely they've achieved very little. In 2019, Hungary offered a $30,000 loan to newlyweds forgiven when you had 3 children. And $30,000 is a really substantial amount, yet since 2019, the birth rate has remained unmoved at 1.59. Seoul is providing Filipino nannies at just $7 an hour to help working mothers. Taiwan, with one of the lowest birth rates in Asia, has spent $3 billion encouraging people to have children, subsidies for IVF, tax credits, cash benefits, paid parental leave of 80%. The government even hosted a singles event, hoping it would break the trend to people not getting married. But as the LA Times reported, young women leaving the singles event early, saying having kids and getting married is just not their first choice anymore. Taiwan retains a fertility rate of 1.1, some say even lower. Policies to offer tax breaks and subsidies for having children may well be worth trying. Trying to reduce housing costs is a good policy, whether or not it increases fertility rates. These policies may well help at the margin, but it's not going to fundamentally change the much larger trends that it seems to be going across the entire world. This is the UK's predicted fertility rate, with pro-fertility policies causing only a very minor bump in birth rates, but still well below the replacement ratio. The government can do many things, but it seems that getting people to have more children is much more complicated than paying higher benefits. But where does this ageing population leave young people today? Do they have any hope for the future? Are the young generation doomed to paying ever higher rates of tax to fund the retirement of the older generation? this video looks at this very interesting question. Thanks for watching. Do subscribe and let me know your thoughts on the subject in the comments. Thanks a lot.